What do you think the ECB is going to do?
But the ECB has better psychology than the US for making an adjustment. No, this isn't a taper, Brian. It's an adjustment. And an adjustment to the program in the range of about 10 to 20 billion euros in terms of a reduction of purchasing in the PEP program. And what that means is that the Eurozone is experiencing a couple of things at the same time. One, they've overtaken the US in terms of vaccination rates in August. So they have now a more highly vaccinated population. Growth in the ECB is definitely turning up, and that growth is being revised up dramatically. It went from 4% expected growth for the end of the year to 4.8%. just since April. And CPI is coming in pretty hot, 3.3% year over year is the preliminary. We'll get the final this week. But that's going to be a little challenging for the ECB not to do something. So, the anticipation is that they will make an adjustment, and they're probably going to beat the Fed. And the Fed has the bigger problem that the psychology is opposite. We got way ahead of expectations. Now we're revising down expectations in the US because we're sort of underperforming those very high expectations. So is it better to be an optimist or a pessimist?
Always an optimist, Gina. You know the answer to that. I mean, I never thought I'd call $20 billion small money. But I mean, if that's sort of the monthly number we're talking about, the ECB, in 2021, it's kind of chump change. Is it going to matter to the market even if they do it?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's amazing. 10 billion here, 10 billion there. Soon you're talking about real money.
Yeah, you have a $100 a week allowance and your parents pull it back to $99.75 because they want to punish you. I mean, it's sort of kind of how it feels as far as the scale of the numbers there. But at some point, the aid will be pulled back, I guess, unless till it's not. What about our Fed, Gina? And we know it doesn't matter if they taper in November or January. It might matter to a day trader of interest rate futures, but for long-term investors, it doesn't. What's your take on what our Fed ultimately does?
Our Fed is really a little more challenged right now. One, you have this political conversation about whether or not, we'll see Powell, maintaining his role at the Fed. But again, that psychology is hard. You have hit the peak in terms of expectations, and now we're revising down, and the numbers are still really strong. Brian. So nobody should be complaining right now, and yet we are. The markets are feeling weakish. They're not falling off of a cliff, but they're not exactly strong. And so, I think that it makes it sort of more challenging, and there's greater importance to that decision than right now at the ECB, where everything's firing on all cylinders. Growth is working, revisions are upward, are up. The stock market is doing well. There's really not a lot of reason not to taper in Europe, whereas in the US, making that tapering decision seems like it's going to deflate a lot of balloons.